For me, I would like to see a much smaller government. I would like to see a sound money system brought back. I truly believe that central banks are the largest blight on our society.
Is the Federal Reserve more powerful than US Treasury? Is the Bank for International Settlements more powerful than the Federal Reserve?
Oil is the most important commodity on the planet.
The banks they're absolute clowns and they're making business impossible in this country. Families are struggling, people are moving their businesses overseas.
For me, I've been positioning my clients predominantly in Bitcoin for the last 4, 5, 6 years.
That's what I love about these particular podcasts. It's the only ones where we say, get yourself financially strong, look into gold, look into silver, look into crypto.
The only difference was when the central bank came along, they gave you pieces of paper and they ruined everything after that.
You cut off one head, 2 more spring up. So what you need to do is actually, when you're dealing with a malignant tumor and cancer to society, which is the central banks, you have to exercise it. And then the wound itself will get better. No, you have to treat the core problem.
We've sold $20 million this month. I love this country. I'm too busy to fix it. And I'm so glad that you're out there doing it, Joel, because I couldn't think of anyone better to fix it.
Gold, silver, and Bitcoin are the last bastion of hope that we have for an alternative financial system.
The fact that they print currency out of thin air that we all have to go to work for and lend it to us with interest is disgusting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ark Podcast, episode 56. I am your host, Joel Jamal, and today we're going to be talking about the record high gold, silver numbers. We've also seen integration with regards to companies bringing on crypto, 1% of certain companies' stock portfolios going to Bitcoin. And we're going to be unpacking some of the instabilities going on in the markets and some of the global news stories happening in the US as well. To join me, I've got the three amigos. This is take number 3 in trying to get this done. Never a dull moment with these gentlemen. I'm joined by Tim Manger, who is sitting in seat number 1. I want to welcome Tim to the show. To his left, I've got Bisher from Stormrake Crypto Portfolios. And I've also got Sam on my left from Liberty Bullion. And by the way, guys, these gentlemen, they're here not only for the gold conference, which happened the last couple of days in Sydney, but I've also got Tim Manger, who's actually come out with this book, 2033, The Great Reset. He's talked about this in the past. He's just launching that tomorrow. I'm going to get him back for a very thorough discussion about this book. And a lot of people have been remarking that Tim really is speaking to what is going on with the history of money, but also how you can actually secure your financial freedom in the future as well. And so, gents, again, take number 3. Welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure when you guys are in Sydney. I love getting you in. And boy, has it been a crazy a few months. Obviously, in the past few months, we've seen crypto top out. We've seen gold and silver top out. But Sam, I mean, you're like the man of the hour with what's going on. Gold has basically extended its record run past $4,200. Mm-hmm. Why is this happening? Why are we seeing people outside, bullion dealers, lining up to get in?
Well, what a question there, the $1 million question, some might say. Look, this is something that I've been predicting for quite a while. We've been coming on podcasts. I've been doing Instagram Lives with Tim and Bish twice a week, telling people that this is coming. To give you the reasons why, though, so recently we saw the Federal Reserve come out and say that they're not going to target inflation anymore, that they're going to focus on full employment and financial stability of the system, i.e., making sure the banks don't go down. So that's kind of a signal to the market that they're not fighting inflation anymore, that they don't really care about it. You also combine that with the fact that they're dropping interest rates in the face of high inflation, whilst it's above their 2% target, again, shows that they're not very serious about fighting inflation. And then you throw on top of that the tariffs, which are inflationary, as well as the increase in the US budget deficit from $2 to $4 trillion. Again, that deficit gets printed out of thin air every year, essentially. So lots of people around the world are worried about what's called runaway inflation, particularly in the US, but also in other countries as well. You look at the crash in US dollar, the DXY is the US dollar index, it's falling through the floor. So people are losing faith in the US dollar. They're losing faith in fiat currencies. They're worried about runaway inflation. And all of this is a perfect storm for inflation hedge assets like gold and silver. So you're absolutely right. We've seen gold in US dollars go up 60% this year. That's the best year since 1979 for gold. And silver even better, up 80% in US dollars so far this year. So awesome numbers. All of the Liberty Bullion clients are obviously cheering at it. Myself as well, this is the asset class that I sit my wealth in. So doing quite well on a personal end as well. Something that we've predicted, something that we've been talking about twice a week as it's been unfolding, and is set to keep going for a long, long time.
And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll come to Bisher in a bit about crypto and how this affects crypto, but you're expanding your operations quite in a big way across Australia. Do you mind sharing a bit of details about that?
Absolutely. So we've had the Melbourne office open for 2.5 years now, which has gone from strength to strength. I've had to hire more and more people there to be able to keep up with the demand. Next month, I'm opening up a Sydney store. So very, very exciting. Lots of interest at the gold conference we've just had of people wanting to come in and do business with us, which is great. We're extremely competitive, and it's going to be good to bring some competition to the Sydney market, really shake it up a bit. And then next year, I'm looking at expanding into Queensland. So that'll be late next year, late 2026, that we open up the Queensland store. I'm an empire builder.
Where's your Sydney office, Sammy?
It's going to be at 25 Martin Place. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Across the road from the ABC, he was saying, and I was like, "Oh, that's good."
I think that was by design.
By design, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Good to see.
Yeah, it's hard to beat a Martin Place address.
Yeah. When you said ABC, I thought it was the media. I thought, maybe
our tax dollars goes towards paying for our own education.
Yeah. No, but I thought, maybe I should take a leaf out of Sam's book and base, the Ark across the road from the ABC, Australian Broadcasting, across the road. But Bisher, it's great to see, one, that we're seeing the mainstream media actually cover this, the fact that there's people lining up, even if it's a competitor, ABC Bullion, outside, because it's like, okay, right, there's a bit of something going on, something in there. Maybe I should be looking at gold. People start fishing, and, we start to see that percolate. But as a crypto guy and a gold guy, for me, a lot of people might see that and think, maybe I should pull out a bit of my money out of crypto. What would you say to those people that are out there listening to that and seeing that?
Look, I'm a money guy first and foremost, and so the value of gold and silver in your portfolio can never be understated. The safety and stability that it provides, and what I love about you, Joel, what I love about Tim and Sam is that we're working towards the people's interests. For us, we see Bitcoin providing a lot of success for people's portfolio, but you can't dismiss gold and silver. And I would just like to make a distinction for those who are watching at home. There is a big difference between Bitcoin and crypto. Crypto, you can think of it as a 24/7 casino or a 24/7 tech stock market, which you can just have at it and trade as you see fit. Bitcoin, I believe, sits in a class of its own. It's still a risk-on asset. There's still high volatility in Bitcoin, but the opportunity in Bitcoin will always remain as a monetary asset in the making. Not quite there, but in the making. And why I say that for those who are maybe looking for more opportunity and more upside, the silver market is where I'm particularly interested in. I think there's a lot of value there, and I've got a lot of education from Sam as to why, and Tim as well, as to why silver is going to be the better performing precious metal over the little while. But for me, I've been positioning my clients predominantly in Bitcoin for the last 4, 5, 6 years, despite the fact there have been many different manias that have come into the crypto markets, many hot tokens and narratives that come through. Part of my responsibility as a digital asset broker and somebody who's been in the space for 10 years is to help people prevent them from making the same mistakes that a lot of new entrants would do otherwise. So if you've got a portfolio that's based on gold and silver at the base, and that's, let's say, call it 50-60%, then you can branch out and take on more risk with Bitcoin in particular, or cryptocurrencies if you're particularly bullish. But I would say for our clients, we've positioned it in such a way that regardless of what you end up buying, whether it be Bitcoin and gold, or Bitcoin and silver, or gold, silver alone, or you just buy Bitcoin alone, you're going to come out ahead because we're positioning you in a way which will take advantage of what is known as the debasement trade, which is essentially all the central banks in the world are just printing currency like no tomorrow. Governments, as Sam has so eloquently stepped out, are racking up massive deficits, and they print the paper over those deficits by printing currency. Nobody wants US treasuries anymore. Nobody wants US dollars anymore. And in that scenario, all assets will do quite well, whether that be real estate, equities, precious metals, crypto. They'll all do well in that environment.
Yeah.
But I just believe the fastest horse in that race is cryptocurrency and precious metals, particularly Bitcoin and gold and silver, of course. And so we're just trying to position our clients in the slipstream where, yes, there's a big loss of faith in currencies of all description: Aussie dollars, euros, pound, US dollars. So what do? We go out there and we convert fake dollars, fake currency into real money. And gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years. Bitcoin has been only around for 16 years, but in another 10, 15, 20 years could become the digital monetary asset of the future. That's what we're positioning our clients for.
Yeah, I want to come back to you later, Tim. Bisher. Sorry, guys. You guys come as a three.
We're a trinity.
And literally, anyone could answer the question on this. Yeah, that's sacrosanct.
Sorry.
But Tim, mate, you're laughing at right now. All right, so we can't start recording again, Tim. I got to ask you about this gold thing. You're a commentator. You kind of shepherd a bit of an audience that are all trying to beat the reset. See what I did there? Now, I want to understand here. What's your reaction when you see this with your audience and you priming them for the gold prices going up and everything with that?
So one word, uncertainty. Uncertainty drives the markets. And I've been, in my new book, a cheap plug, probably going to do this a couple of times, 2033, The Great Reset, I talk about digital IDs, major uncertainty in digital IDs and what that's going to do to the monetary system, what it's going to do to assets trading forward. People are concerned. Donald Trump and his tariffs comments, all his little tariff statements regarding China and everyone else. Also, this looks eerily, and in my second book, I set the scene for my third book, and that was that what you're going to see is the exact replica of the New Deal from 33, where they created more banking legislation. And you just watched, obviously, the Genius Act and other acts get put into place by the 47th president. It looks awfully like FDR's 1933 New Deal, and that created so much uncertainty. There was a run on gold like never. I mean, gold was the currency of the period, but the problem was, the run on the commercial banks was so dire, they had to shut the banks because if they had allowed people to keep taking and converting, because the United States was on a convertible gold standard, you could actually take fake US dollars into the commercial bank and convert it to gold. But the problem was there was so much uncertainty and so much fear because the US dollar had failed. And that's where we're at essentially now. And I know there's people out there that don't want to believe that, but we're watching it. Gold tells the story. Gold tells the story. It writes the script, and gold will always write it the way it is. If the USD is strong, you won't see much out of gold. If the USD is weak, you will see gold run to the stars. We saw it in 32, early 33. Roosevelt shut the banks, and a lot of people don't realize he did that because if he'd allowed people to keep going to gold, and Sam can talk about this, especially in Weimar Republic, if people kept using gold instead of the currency, the government would have lost control. The Treasury, the Federal Reserve loses control because the Federal Reserve rely on currency to maintain its power base. They don't want you using reserve level assets, and gold is a reserve level asset. So my point is the people were in danger, or the government or the Treasury was in danger of allowing the common man to become more powerful than those that make the rules. So they just simply shut it off at the source. They shut off the off-ramps, which was the commercial banks. And we're seeing that. I mean, I'll ask these gentlemen their opinions, but I think we're seeing with the commercial banks, we're seeing off-ramps being closed with our assets. We're seeing lines around the corner, and you haven't seen these lines since the 1930s. Around the corner and down the street. I mean, this is...
Well, Sam, let's talk about it, because I think we're all very much worried about this. So last time you came in, it was a bit of an emergency podcast. Bisher's on the phone. I didn't put two and two together, but Sam, you're obviously having some of those banking issues because the banks are, I won't say what I want to say, but they're absolute clowns and they're making business impossible in this country. And you're not the only one. It's not like Sam's doing illicit things. So many people, short-term lending companies I know, professional gamblers that I know, people that have very normal businesses like temporary fencing hire, they've been struggling as well with banks, not being able to make simple business transactions, pay wages when they need to. And families are struggling. People are moving their businesses overseas. There is a huge worry about digital ID. And as you guys know, and everyone in my audience is aware of this, 10th of December is a big date this year. because the under 16s ban on social media is coming in, and we've all got these big question marks around, okay, how are you going to enforce that? You're going to have to do digital ID for all of you gents. You're not sick. You're not below 16. So of course they're going to have to justify rolling that out with everyone under the guise of helping children. Gents, what do we do about this? That's what everyone's thinking. What do we do about this with our businesses, with our money, with everything? And this is the real question people, I think, are wrestling with, and I think you've wrestled with in this, Tim. But do you want to have a tackle about that, Bisher?
Look, it's a huge topic. It's important to realize that they're progressing with their plans. The UK has gone out and said that you must have a digital ID if you wish to do business within the United Kingdom. So this is why we position our clients' portfolios in gold, silver, and Bitcoin, is that you're able to be outside the legacy financial system without having to rely upon it. Because if you require a digital ID to access the legacy financial system, whether that be traditional bank accounts, whether that be, your ability to tap and go and grab your coffee or whatever it may be, I think it's important that people realize that, gold and silver and Bitcoin are the last bastion of hope that we have for an alternative financial system. It's funny that we describe gold as an alternative when really it is the backbone of the financial system.
That is a good point.
And Bitcoin is an alternative form of currency. It came out, and the white paper in Satoshi's original idea was peer-to-peer electronic cash, which does not require currency to be intermediated by commercial banks and central banks. That, if I wanted to go and buy an ounce of gold, Sammy could take my Bitcoin off my hands and I can walk away with an ounce of gold, right? And that's the whole idea behind this market. And so we want people to understand that, yes, whilst digital IDs are quite concerning and are a threat to personal liberties and freedoms, there are alternatives thanks to gold, silver, and Bitcoin that gives you your purchasing power back in your hands, and that gives you the freedom of choice back in your hands as to how you wish to conduct and live your life.
Well, what's really interesting about this is the fact that big tech are not actually showing up to these hearings. So these inquiries that are being held in the parliament, they're not showing up to these hearings. It's like, are we really relying on big tech to not show up and explain how they're going to enforce the under 16s ban to save our souls right now? I mean, it's really quite interesting. I'll just play this quickly for you guys, just so you understand the tone of what's going on with this.
On the Australian government, the plan to ban under 16s from social media may not work. Representatives from Google, YouTube and Microsoft appeared before Senate estimates today ahead of the ban.
The legislation will not only be extremely difficult to enforce, it also does not fulfil its promise of making kids safer online.
Officials from other platforms, including Meta, Snapchat and TikTok, failed to front today's inquiry.
And look, it's really funny because to me, it's sort of like, okay, are they not showing up because Australia's so irrelevant that it's not worth your time? You know what I mean? Because you guys have travelled, right? You know what I mean with that, right? It's like, okay, well, this thing happened in Australia. Who cares? What's your reaction to all this, Sam?
Well, look, I have to agree with you on that one. I've just come back from a US trip, and driving through the US, I drove up the East Coast. 27 million people in Australia. Texas has got more people than us. So if you look at the EU's got 500 million people. The US has almost 400 million people. So, yes, Australia, we're a wealthy nation and we're an Anglosphere nation. But beyond that, we're not really that important in the grand scheme of things. And, when it comes to the government's push here, I feel like the social media companies have gently pushed back as much as they can. But at a certain point, they've got to toe the line. So, obviously they're giving their side of it, that it's not going to protect kids and it's going to be impossible to enforce, which I agree with them on. But at the end of the day, what can they do? They don't have control over our legislature. They don't have control over our political system. They don't have control over our politicians and the arguably tyrannical stuff they're trying to push on us.
Who has control over our politicians? That's the question.
Oh, well, some might say.
Who is they? Who is they, Bisher?
I don't know. I'm asking the question. I don't have the answer.
Become a bit of a meme. By the way, great time, mate. I really like. I've got to get your contact for that because as you can see, I run out of ties pretty quick. So you see the same ones, but I love that tie. I want to steal it off you.
Absolutely, take it.
But I'll turn the cameras off before I steal it. But guys, like when we're looking at what's going on with Australia, there is an opportunity here. And I know you guys are all thinking it. You're thinking, if the government just changed this law or just changed that law. I mean, you tell me, what laws would you guys like to see to make it more of like a crypto capital of the world, Australia? It's laughable to even say that in a country full of, crazy rules about drinking water in the car, But like, what would you like to see legislatively?
I mean, I would love to hear these boys' thoughts, but I think that close to small to no government is the best way forward. We have an incredibly bloated legislature. We have an incredibly bloated tax code. We would do a lot better by just removing the government, getting their hands out of our pockets, getting themselves out of our lives. But this is a really big topic to unpack. A big government is part of the reason why we're so bullish on gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Reason being is as government gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more bloated and more wasteful and more expenditure is required and more spending is required to fund this government, the more they're going to have to print currency in order to support it. My ideal would be, if I could be able to wave a magic wand, is, move towards a more libertarian ideal where people can self-govern and self-rule, and that the free market ultimately decides how resources and capital is allocated. How can we call ourselves a capitalist society or a capitalist country when what is essentially the form and function and base of our economy is centrally planned, which is the issuance of currency? And the issuance and the setting of interest rates is completely centrally planned. So how can we have a free market economy when the basis of the issuance of our currency and interest rates are centrally planned? Right. A bit of a paradox. So the legislature really is downstream from what is upstream, which is the central banks printing currency and setting interest rates.
Right. At the mercy of.
Yeah. Correct.
And people. For those of you that laugh at that, look at the UK, look at Liz Truss and how she got ousted in less than 40 days. It was because she was basically blackmailed. This is what she said. This is not what Joel Jamal is saying. This is exactly what she said on camera. She said it's because what was going on with the Reserve Bank over there was they were basically blackmailing me. If I went ahead with these policies, they would dump all these bonds onto the market, collapse the economy in the UK, and it would be her fault and she'd have to resign. So this is what she has said. So if it's not a conspiracy theory, if that's what our mother country of Australia is saying with their Prime Minister, how bad do you think it is in little old Australia? Tim, what's your reaction to all this?
Look, first of all, I want to echo the sentiments of Bish. I obviously always agree with these gentlemen. But for me, the problem is that people don't really, and again, I address this in my new book, 2033, The Great Reset, available tomorrow from October 17 in Audible.
The link's in the description, guys. We'll have it there.
I'll leave all that alone. But my point here is we're globalist and we're not local. Most people are blindsided by this, in my opinion. I know there's people out there that want to believe we have a local government structure, but as the 11th largest contributor to the UN, which we have been since 1945, and we still are to this day, the World Economic Forum, together with the UN and the central bank system, they've pretty much got the entire agenda. Now, I know that's not a word people love, but you're going to have to get used to it because there is an agenda, and they are controlled by NGOs. Not by local governments. And I don't see, and everything I've written about in my second book and my third book is a globalist agenda. And the local politicians of these Commonwealth nations are subsidiaries of that. They're not the controllers of it. They're being handed a message. The message is digital IDs, for example. The message is climate change. The message is pandemics. Whatever that message is, it's being handed down from somewhere else. And I think until people understand that your vote is questionable at best, because of course there's a much bigger plan for the planet. And again, these are maybe people may or may not agree with this, but my view is, since I follow the World Economic Forum, like shadowing them and reading some of their white papers that have been sold to the UN as a really good idea. Transhumanism is one of them, which the UN bought. Now, transhumanism, I don't know, does that sound good for us? Transhumanism. That means, trans. What does trans? No, don't ask this. Don't ask what trans means to you, boys. But anyway, my point is there's this transition. Now, here's the interesting thing. Beyond transhumanism, do you know what you have? posthumanism. And posthumanism is completely AI. So this entire system, from my opinion as a conspiratorial guy, is fully driven by the primary ID system, which is the digital ID, which leads you into social credit scores, which leads you into issues with your monetary system. Now, there was something else, if you don't mind, I want to dive in and add to Bisher's comments. You said, what would you like to see in Australia for crypto? You know what I'd like to see?
Yep.
A definition of money.
Okay.
Because Bitcoin has recently been tested by a magistrate in the lower level courts, and it turns out they don't really understand whether Bitcoin is monetary or not, or whether it's currency or not. And if it could be tested in the High Court and the ATO taken to task, we might find that Bitcoin could undergo a complete transformation because it is actually not what it's being sold. It's actually closer to a monetary system. In other words, it probably doesn't incur a lot of taxes and so forth. I don't know if you boys remember that case where the magistrate was testing in the magistrate's court. He deemed it as being potentially this Bitcoin needs to be looked at a little more closely. In other words, it's not classified correctly. It needs to be classified. It needs to be given a category, which would give people a lot more confidence, in my opinion, to move into this asset. There's my view.
Is it
Are you, Sam?
Yeah, Sam, what do you think about that?
Well, what would I like to see in this country? Look, I'm a pragmatist. I do have my idealistic moments. I'm a pragmatist, but this is a great question. For me, I'll just go out and say it. I would like to see the complete and utter ending of central banking. We should have a sound money system. We should use gold and silver in the coinage again. We should have money that is real money. In 1966, we had the 50-cent rounds that were 80% silver, and they're worth a lot more than 50 cents today. They're worth $25 today because of the silver content. So that gives you an idea of just how much we've been scammed. So I'm fully agreeing with Bish on this one as well. Small government, a government that you could drown in a bathtub, that's small. It's
Good idea.
because big government is not your friend. Dana White, I've seen a Dana White clip where he says, you don't want anything from the government, and I fully agree. You don't want anything from the government. You don't want to be on the government's handouts because you don't bite the hand that feeds you, and you want to stand up. You want to have freedom. You want to have the independence that comes with, not relying on your government. So for me, I would like to see a much smaller government. I would like to see a sound money system brought back. And the reason why is that I truly believe that central banks are the largest blight on our society at the moment. Timmy was talking about, banks and banks shutting and, back when money was backed by gold and people running on the banks and all of that. I want people to realize that central banking is organized theft and legalized theft. The fact that they print currency out of thin air that we all have to go to work for and lend it to us with interest is disgusting. That is disgusting. That is absolutely abhorrent behavior. The fact that was legalized speaks more to our legal system than it does to anything else and our morality as a society. The fact that we allow legalized plunder of our own citizenry is absolutely disgusting. What I mean by that is, every time that the government prints the dollar in your pocket is worth slightly less. So if you're going out there, you're earning all these dollars, doing a hard job, construction, whatever you do to make money, and you're working hard, you deserve it. Great. Now, tomorrow, they've printed more dollars. The dollars that you worked hard for are worth less. That is called theft, and it's a complicated theft. It's not as simple as someone putting a gun to your head and saying empty your wallet, because at least that's an honest robbery. You get the adrenaline rush, you hand over your wallet, you feel relieved afterwards that they didn't shoot you and you're still alive. And, you go home to your girlfriend and you go, oh, I'm still alive, you're still beautiful. All right, at least you get that. With what the central banks are doing, they're robbing you behind your back. They're lying to your face. They're gaslighting you about inflation. And what are we supposed to do? Just take it? Just take it on the nose? And the more that you look into how they rob us, there's all sorts of funny tricks. One of them is bracket creep. So they print all this currency, which pushes the price of everything up and also does push up wages eventually, although not that we've seen wages really keep up with inflation. But, in the case that wages do, you get pushed up through the tax brackets. So it's not that you're any better off because, you are earning more dollars, but the dollars buy you less. So in reality, you're about the same, but then you go up in a higher tax bracket and the government takes more and more off you. So even though you're earning more dollars, you get taxed at a higher rate and then you've got less real spending power, real purchasing power at the end of it. And it's very tricky. It's too complex for the average person to figure out, which is why it's such an effective theft scheme. And for somebody that understands it and tries to help people escape it, it is, and as I said at the beginning, the biggest blight on our society. If there was one thing, Joel, one thing that I could change about this country, it would be the complete and utter removing of central banking.
Just on that note as well, I mean, you talked about how important it is to have small government and we should remove entitlements and expectations and handouts, and you don't want to rely on the government. If you could find that article for me, Joel, about the fact that there close to 50% of the Australian Electoral Commission is reliant upon the government in one way, shape or form for either benefits, whether they be subcontracting, whether they...
Oh, absolutely. No, that
close to 50%.
I think it's a little over. So the technical term is at least 50% of families in Australia take out more from the tax system than they put in. I think it's over 50. It's actually been that for a few years now, at least 5 years.
Shocking. That's shocking.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it shows you how can we have genuine political reform when we have central banks, as Sammy mentioned, printing currency out of thin air, and that should be removed straight away. Amen to that. And then we have over half of our country reliant upon the government for some sort of handout, benefit, pension, subcontracting. Would they get their income from the government in one way, shape or form from their business? NDIS is a massively bloated beast. So how can we genuinely have proper political reform in this country when over half of the citizenry are eating out of the hand of the government?
Well, gents, this is what I'm concerned about, because as you've all got followings, you talk to people, you talk to clients, people with money. The real concern is this image that we see of people basically, it used to be a third of people taking out less from the tax code. Now it's looking like half because people are starting to hop in the cart or they're leaving. Eventually it gets to the point where the only person pulling the cart's like, you know what, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? These guys that aren't doing anything paying into the tax code. And I think that's what explains this millionaire migration from 2024. I'm keen to get some more updated data, but people are leaving in droves, places like the UK, places like China and India, for various reasons. But what we're going to start to see in Australia, I believe, and we are seeing it right now. I just had Scott Challen in here. He's a business guy. He's got 5 different businesses. He's saying, mate, Joel, there is a brain drain going on in this country. Young people of competence, skills, tradies and everything. They're like, why would I stay here? I'm seeing so many viral videos about it. And so what I want to say to you guys is, okay, sure, we want the government to be small, but we can also offer some incentives to make sure we're keeping those people here. Should we go down the route of positive rights? And that is sort of what we saw in our first episode, Bisher, where we looked at the Bitcoin Act of 2024. This was a proposed idea of what America should do if Trump gets elected. Point number 7, I really think it should be earlier, but point number 7 is protect Bitcoin property rights. It affirms the rights of self-custody. US government can't seize or confiscate lawfully owned BTC. Do you look at something like that? And for those of you that don't understand positive rights versus negative rights, I love using religious freedom as an example. Negative rights are basically things where you can't go and criticize LGBT people, or you're not allowed to do those sorts of things. Whereas positive rights are like you have the right to exercise your Christian values, or you have the right to have access to your Bitcoin without government. Do we go down the direction of positive rights at all, or are you guys just saying nothing from the government?
Nothing. No, I mean, look, I'll let Sammy probably step it out a little bit more, but my point is I don't want any rights from the government, positive, negative. I don't need anything from them. The less that we rely on them, the better, because the moment that you hand over any sort of political power, some of your own agency to the government in order to enact your property rights, your civil liberties,
right,
it's a problem, right? This is the thing that really is a cornerstone of Bitcoin philosophy and of Goldbug's philosophy, which is our property rights are enforced through it's God-given, right? It's not given from the government, right?
It's like a free speech thing.
Yeah, this is a mandate from heaven. It doesn't, as long as I have earned and protected and provided for my family without it being at the harm or cost of someone else, That's it. The free market is really the best way of allocating capital resources and protecting one's personal private property rights. We do not have that here in Australia in any way, shape or form. People will argue that, what are you talking about? We do have property rights. We're talking about the excessive taxation. We're talking about, putting on spare bedroom levies. We're talking about, they've now walked back unrealized capital gains tax because it's obviously a terrible idea. But then they've said, but we're going to double the tax rate for those holders of balances over $3 million. So they go really far out and they say, we're going to tax unrealized gains. People go, no, don't do that. And then they walk it back and they still put in some dastardly policy, but because they've moved the Overton window so far to say we're going to tax unrealized gains, that we fight for not having unrealized gains, which is why we're fighting for such a disgusting thing that shouldn't even be in place in the first place. Then they double the tax rate for balances over $3 million from 15% to 30%, and that comes into effect the next financial year. It's for me, it's no government, right? And if there is to be some form of government that we have to give that concession, it has to be incredibly small, and the powers that are given to it are extremely limited.
I disagree, but you're wearing a great tie, so I want to agree with you. Sam, please, yeah.
I'd love to hop in here. So I completely agree where Bish is coming from with the idea that Bitcoiners and gold bugs don't rely on property rights from the government. For me, I've got a gold and silver stack and I don't really care what the government says. If they say that, it's their right to seize it, well, I disagree and I've hidden it. So good luck finding it. But I'm with you, Joel. I mean, I've just come back from the US and, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, enshrining all of those within a constitutional document. In Australia, we don't have freedom of speech enshrined in our constitution. I think that's absolutely stupid. I think that we do need that as a positive right. I think that we have to, if we're going to have a government, we're not going to live in anarchy. If we're going to have a government, we need a Bill of Rights. We need enshrined into the Bill of Rights. 1, freedom of speech. 2, if you ask me, we should get some gun rights as well, because the police aren't doing a good job in Victoria of stopping the machetes. I'd like to have a gun so that if anyone comes into my home, castle doctrine, bang, bang. That's my 2 cents. I want positive rights. I'm with you, Joel. I would love a Bill of Rights. I would, just like the Americans have, but that doesn't mean big government. And if you look at the founding fathers of the US and their constitution, that constitution was written to curtail the powers of government. So just like Bish says, if we're going to have a government, it needs to be very small. It has to have very limited powers, and we have to have positive rights enshrined in a Bill of Rights, enshrined in a constitution, the highest document in the land that no court can then, retroactively walk over and say, oh yeah, except in this scenario. No, it's an absolute right. It is an absolute positive right. So
yeah, because what I'm worried about, and by the way, Bisher, I do see where you're coming from with this, because I think you're often dealing with clients and you're thinking, okay, how can I make you the most prosperous person and take care of your interests? When it comes to the politics side of it and the legislation side of it, I'm thinking, as a nation, how can we put Australia first and make us an absolute crypto capital of the world? How can we make sure we take care of our citizens as a nation? How can we attract the best and brightest from around the world and create the environment to do that without subsidies, but the environment around that with legislative protections? Because coming out of COVID, free speech is the best example. Sure, government stays out of it, but it's a free-for-all. But then you've got the corporations in America and in Ireland. They don't pay taxes here. They basically censor speech around the jabs and COVID and everything. Mm-hmm. And we really have an opportunity there where the Australian government could actually say, no, you can't do that to Australian citizens. So you can do that wherever you want, but in our little plot of land, you can't do that with regards to stopping people from being able to speak about what they want online. So we enshrine that. But also you could do that with finance and crypto, and you must provide these financial services if you want to operate in Australia. People have the right. You can't just shut them down through this. Otherwise, you cop the big stick of government. I think you've got to balance it. Yes, we've got to restrict government and put positive rights in, but we've also got to restrict big corporations from having a monopoly and an oligopoly and teaming up. That's where I'm coming from. But again, I'm no constitutional law expert. I have no idea, but I just see these issues.
Governance is a huge topic to unpack, and I try to stay in my corner of the world, which is in digital assets and Bitcoin. But the whole premise of becoming a Bitcoiner, being a gold bug, being a silver bug, is that you do not rely on the government. You do not need the government. And I think it's important that whilst, yes, it's an important topic of discussion, and that, yes, let's try to make this a free market economy as much as possible, and let's look at ways we can look at doing that through the legislature, it comes back to the central problem, which is the central bank. How can we have a free market economy? How can we have a thriving free market economy if the very cornerstone, foundation, principle, guiding light of our free market is a centrally planned, centrally issued government IOU? That's really where it all comes apart. And that problem doesn't start in Canberra. It starts at the RBA, and then further up from that, the Federal Reserve, and then further up from that, the BIS. So, that's why I want to move away from putting the blame on the government and then looking at ways that we can fix the government, because the government is more of a symptom and is a downstream issue from the upstream problem, which Sammy stepped out so eloquently as the biggest blight in our Western world is the central banks.
Well, that's what I'm really keen to see. And in the UK, we're seeing Reform UK under Nigel Farage looking like they're going to sweep the government. I'm really curious, with an overwhelming majority, what's Nigel Farage actually going to be able to do, keeping in mind the fact that he is talking to people like Liz Truss. I know he's trying to learn the lessons. How's he going to deal with the deep state, the bureaucracy? Tim, what's your reaction on this, man?
Well, I'm a globalist, so I'm not a personal globalist, but I'm a fan of the study of globalism. And I don't believe, again, I'm just going to keep saying this, the problem depends on how you tackle the problem. You can, it's like the monetary system. We could try to get out of this by using fiat currencies. We could protest against the central bank. We could protest with signs outside our commercial bank and wave our fists in the air, and you would get to the total sum of abject poverty. The only way out of the currency system is to move to the monetary system. And in my opinion, the only way out of the political system is to understand that there is a globalist agenda. And I know this is not maybe what your listeners want to hear, but I study these the UN, the BIS, the most important of all institutions. I study the WF because these guys, they're handing down not directives for the UK and not directives for Australia, but directives for the world, and mainly for the Commonwealth nations. The Commonwealth nations move and function as a group. That is a fact. And you don't see that in the East as much. You don't see that in Saudi Arabia. You don't see that in China so much. And in fact, we've even got a breakaway group known as the BRICS Alliance, because effectively they are... sorry, there's a bit of noise coming through. Are we good?
Yeah. Sorry, noisy tenants next door. We're trying to kick them out.
What are they doing next time?
Help me expand the operation. You won't hear that next time.
So I just want to finish on this little rant, because it's so critical for me that people understand globalism. Because if you can't see it, what you're going to do is you're going to fight the enemy, yes, but from the wrong perspective. You're going to have the wrong weapons, you're going to have the wrong enemy and the wrong tools. That's my view. I just want to be clear before I get skewered by your audience. In fact, somebody on your channel said to me, you've got a Trump hat behind you, mate. And somebody thought this was my channel and said, you're a Trump lover, are you, mate? And I said, well, I do it. I think it's a nice hat. So I guess my point is, if you can play this game of Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, but the problem isn't those guys. The problem is up the chain. I mean, the question for these boys, and again, is the Federal Reserve more powerful than US Treasury? Is the Bank for International Settlements more powerful than the Federal Reserve?
Yes.
Is the World Economic Forum more powerful than all of these guys, which is 1,000 corporations, guys? And we're talking the most powerful corporations on the planet sit on the board of the World Economic Forum, and the UN, 193 signatories to a convention that's been around since, well, long before 1945, but I'll start there. I guess that's my view. And I don't know whether you boys, I know we're, anyway, over to you, Sammy.
Yes. Look, Timmy, I'm right with you on that one. I think that if people understood the central banking system, the Bank for International Settlements, the Federal Reserve, if they looked back at American history, 1776, the Constitution, I'm not sure that most people are aware that central banking is unconstitutional in the US. The US has had 3 central banks, 2 of which were burned down within 30 years of their building. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It is privately owned. The Federal Reserve part is just the name they put on it so that it wouldn't get burned down. And talking about political change, Ron Paul. I love Ron Paul. He wrote a book called End the Fed. I love him. He's a good bloke. We look back at 2008, the Ron Paul revolution. You look at how the GOP rigged things for him to not be able to win it, and then Obama got in. That tells you that the deep state, the globalists, the system, when someone comes in who has the right idea, wants to make the right change for their country, wants to make their constitution sound again. I mean, the fact that an unconstitutional private central bank prints dollars out of thin air and lends them to people with interest, the founding fathers warned against this. They warned against it explicitly, and we still have it today. So I don't think most people understand how central banks take your freedom. It's a complex issue, so it takes a little bit of research. I completely understand. But I'm right with you, Timmy. You know, if you think about who controls our government, it's the central banks. And if you think about who controls the central banks, well, it's the people that own them. And that is a deep, dark conversation.
Guys, let's check this conversation. We've alluded a bit. I've alluded a bit to Liz Truss. And again, I've had very long chats with Liz Truss. When I was in Washington, D.C., thanks to CPAC Australia, I went in February. I was blessed with, we had an Aussie table of about 25 Aussies. I happened to be seated right in front of Liz Truss. And we had a great chat about everything from Brexit to what Australia should be doing to, you know, what Tony Abbott's up to. And she told me the whole story about the Bank of England thing. If that conversation doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. But this just gives you an idea of what she said on the topic, just the tip of the iceberg. But I strongly encourage you to listen to her conversation with Connor Tomlinson online in full, where she talks about the full story. But this is just a clip from LBC on what she said.
Do you believe Andrew Bailey should still be Governor of the Bank of England?
No, I don't. I certainly think there should be a proper investigation into what happened in September 22 and the actions the Bank of England took. But, you know, when, you know, the difficulty is the way that Gordon Brown set up the independence of the Bank of England in the statute books means it's very hard to move a governor of the Bank of England on. But I think big mistakes have been made with monetary policy.
Do you believe?
And we see a similar thing in the US, right? I mean, there's still a bit of a grey area around who actually can hire and fire the head of the Reserve Bank in the US. It's like Trump's like saying, "I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just going to get."
No, it's simple. It's the wrong way around. If people keep thinking that somehow a US president is going to override the Fed, I think they have rocks in their head. You've got to understand that the Federal Reserve have bought into the Bank for International Settlements in 1994. That was 31 years ago. They have a controlling interest in the Bank for International Settlements. That is frightening. That means that the Federal Reserve is beyond the borders of the United States and no US president, and the US president has restrictions under the 22nd Amendment. It's not possible. Throughout US history, there are two monetary systems. There is the Treasury and there is as of 1913, there is a central bank. Prior to that, we just had the Treasury. And I should also say that the Treasury did mess around a little bit with the bimetallic standard. They used to move things around, as Sammy knows. Gold was the substrate and silver was the medium of exchange. And they used to move the value of silver around, you know, and it used to disappear offshore and onshore. They've been doing that forever. The only difference was when the central bank came along, they gave you pieces of paper and they ruined everything after that. So anyway, I'm just...
I'd take it a step further and say Liz is you know, despite the fact that I'm almost at odds with politicians, I've kind of come to appreciate her view a little bit more. But one thing I would like to say is I'd like to take it further that, you know, moving on, the governor of the Bank of England is step one, but step two is to remove it in its entirety. Get rid of the RBA, get rid of the Federal Reserve, get rid of the Bank of England. Don't move on the head of the dragon because it's like a hydra. You know, you cut off one head, two more spring up. So what you need to do is actually, when you're dealing with a malignant tumor and cancer to society, which is the central banks, you need to be, you know, you have to remove it. You have to exercise it. You can't just leave it in there and hope that, oh, okay, maybe I can just treat around the wound and then the wound itself will get better. No, you have to treat the core problem, which is central banking itself. It's a huge topic, And I know it's not, politically favorable to talk like this, but it's very apparent what the core problem is, which is we do not have a free money system, which is why Bitcoin, gold, and silver can continue to appreciate in value over time. But we need to move back to sensible monetary policy, which is we can't have government-issued IOUs to back our dealings and our mediums of exchange. I'd love to hear from Sam.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Central banking, it needs to be ended. There's no half measures here. You can't have a good central bank. It's an oxymoron, right? They rob you. They steal from you. It's legalized plunder, and it's not supposed to be this way. There was a time at which it wasn't this way. And if you look at the average wage in the US, but priced in grams of gold, it has fallen off an absolute cliff since the 1960s. Inflation has gone absolutely insane. You look at the income disparity or the wealth disparity and how the money printer has benefited those with assets and insider knowledge, the elite. This is not conducive to a healthy democracy, guys. This is how the elite plunder the people. Is
there such a thing as democracy, Sammy?
Oh, well, look, it's...
is that a fair question?
We vote in pencil. But what I will say there is, I believe that we can live in a world, if we wake enough people up to the dangers of central banking, the evils of central banking, and how we need to have an honest society again, I truly believe we can. I live in hope that we can have a good society. But the problem is that the changes that are being... pushed in the system, they're not going to get us there. So, an example, we're living in a massive cost of living crisis at the moment. There's tent cities in Queensland. It's horrible out there. The price of food is skyrocketing. Wages aren't keeping up. People are really, really hurting out there. Food banks are getting hit up in a big way. It's bad, right? So what does the government do? They tell you that they're going to give you handouts that they print out of thin air. Anybody with any economic knowledge knows that's not going to make things better. That's only going to make things worse.
Sammy, what's that famous statement that he who seeks safety and security from his government gets neither, or something like? What was that?
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin.
So he who trades liberty bullying. He who trades liberty for safety deserves neither and will end up with neither. Is the essentially, and that's it. Is that we live in a society where people have lost the appreciation for freedom, lost the appreciation for liberty. You look at the average Australian, they don't want to be free. And I want them to be free. I want to tell them why they want to be free, because being free is incredible. But what most people seem to want is safety. They want a safe banking system where if their commercial bank fails, the central bank will bail it out with a massive bailout so they don't lose their deposits. Well, guys, how about you just don't keep your money in the bank so that if the bank does fail, it doesn't affect you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also just to add on to that as well. And I mean, love to hear from you as well, Joel, because your thoughts are important to us, because this is how we get to move forward as a nation, is actually have good, honest conversation and then plan and execute. Yeah. I think to step forward, even just and to kind of summarize a little bit more, freedom of choice, freedom of responsibility, it's comes with it, not freedom of consequences. If you make good choices, as Tim would always say, you get the reward. You allocate your capital wisely, you build your business, you go out there, you earn an honest wage, you work hard, you hire people, you do the right thing, you get the reward of growing your business. And that's what a free market economy promise is all about. And if we're working hard for, say, Bitcoin, or working hard for gold and silver, and that's how we store our value and that's how we exchange value, it just means that our economic freedoms and our economic choices are better preserved over time. Because if you do all the right decisions and you're making all the good choices that you've done and you've reaped the reward from your earnings, you need to be able to store that wealth, those earnings, into something that the government cannot print into oblivion. So whilst we, can speculate on what a better government could look like or what better governance should look like, I would just say, let's bring it back to a pragmatic reality, which is, yes, these are nice ideals, but the course of action is, whilst the government is in power and there is a central banking system and there's massive amounts of currency printing going on and governments are racking up massive deficits, convert your worthless Aussie dollars into real assets, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and just preserve your wealth that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, and I want to hear the question from Rami, because Rami's been taking some notes, and he's kind of like the best. He consumes more of the Joel Jamal Ark podcast than anyone else. I do want to hear from Rami, but I just want to say, look, this show and the people that tune in, there's two ways that I often take things. I tell them, hey, here's some options for how you can secure your family's future. And that's what I love about these particular podcasts. It's the only ones where we say, get yourself financially strong, look into gold, look into silver, look into crypto, and be smarter with your banking. You know, I've been looking into more community banks. I've been opening up community bank accounts to diversify a bit, to give people ideas. But the other part of me is, like you guys, traveled a bit, and I'm like, you know what? Australia really is a special place. And as much as I would love to get up and get out of here, I can't see myself doing that. You know, I grew up here, was born here. My grandparents are buried here. My dad's buried here. I'm not going anywhere.
You're virtually indigenous.
But pretty much. Oh, we are.
You can go walkabouts.
Literally, mate. Go walk about and go on a spiritual journey. But no, so I look at it and I'm like, there reaches a point where it's like, okay, everyone's got to make this calculation. Are we in or are we not in? Are we actually going to fight for this country or are we not? And by the way, there's nothing wrong with taking your business overseas for a time and making sure you're strong. I actually encourage people to do that because the economic conditions here are terrible. But there's going to reach a point in the next 100 years where we're going to have to do something to save this country in a huge way. And obviously, I'd prefer sooner. Next 3 to 6 years would be nice. But this audience is growing to the point that it's very much a family that's been through a lot over 5 years, whether it was COVID, whether it was whatever. The audience is, I think we just crossed the 1 billion view mark across all of our videos in 5 years, which is nuts. I can't even conceptualize that. But we've also got the largest political Facebook page in Australia of any political party and any political organization, not including like some names like Pauline and that. And so it's like, okay, we are a family. We actually have to really think about how do we want to remold this nation in a way that is worthy of those that started it to begin with. You know, a bit like 1776. How can we actually there reaches a point where your army gets so big where it's like, okay, you're holding the baton. What do you want to do with it?
And also on that note, it's like, we're not going anywhere. Like, I've got 30 employees now. I'm based in Australia. I was born here. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, it's worth fighting for. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that we're still a Commonwealth country is a problem. Republic would be far better. I think I've got a few ideas off the top of my head. I'm going to start off. I'll be President, Supreme Leader of Australia.
Yalla, let's do it.
Yalla, let's go. I think I can have this country tip top in no time. I'll have Sam as my Minister of Finance. I'll have you as my Minister of the Interior.
Minister of Eyebrows.
And I'll have Tim as my right hand, my VP.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to be your right hand. But
No, sorry. It gets around. But getting back to the topic at hand, you know, and jokes aside, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, Sam has built an incredible business here in this country, as have I, as have you. You've built an amazing platform and you've got a lot of political nous and clout. This is how change is going to be made. And this is why I want to build Australia's biggest crypto brokerage. And Sammy's building Australia's biggest bullion dealer. Tim's building Australia's biggest research house. You're building Australia's largest political engine. That, when you put those 4 elements together, is a recipe for success. And it's not something that's going to be done overnight. It's not something that is done over a year, 2 years, 3 years. This is a multi-decade long journey that we're on together.
Yeah.
So better get used to each other, boys.
And the guys, and sorry to harp on the point, but the reason I bring this up is I read a really scary stat the other day where some of the elites of the world, wealthy people in the world, Hollywood stars and whatever, when presented the evidence of where things are going with nuclear war, you'd think that they would try and be like, well, let's stop everything. Let's try and stop it from happening. Let's stop the root of the problem. But instead, they think to their own self-preservation and they're thinking, well, Sydney is out of range of the nukes. I'm going to go buy up a plan. You know what I mean? Like, nothing wrong with having a plan B. But I do get worried sometimes when we're putting these things out there. I want to balance it and just say, guys, this is not to say that we can't save this country.
Yep.
You should absolutely make yourself strong. You should make your family strong. And if that means taking a business overseas for more opportune tax situations, you should. But at the same time, you know, we're not, this country's not over and done with yet.
I'd really like to touch on that, Joel, because for me, I've said it before, I just came back from the US, a big 5-week trip across the US, a 2-week road trip up the East Coast, and, you know, visited Thomas Jefferson's house at Monticello. And I love American history. I love 1776. I love that revolutionary spirit, and I would love to see it brought to this country. I'm an Australian through and through. I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. Their parents were born here. I've got a lot of love for this country. It's such a beautiful country. It's got such beautiful people. The Australian ethos is amazing, right? We live in an incredible country, but we have a horrible government, and it's disgusting the stuff they're pushing on us. So, for me, I focus on the money side of things. I focus on helping my fellow Australians protect their wealth, and I've helped my clients generate over $150 million in profit over the last 2 years. That is my impact on this country. But having said that, being in the US, I'm setting up a bullion dealer in Texas, and the income tax rate in Texas is 0%. You compare that to the 47% that I pay here in Australia, and you can understand why I've thought about moving to the US once or twice. But I'm right with you, Joel. I'm an Australian. I want to fix this country. I want to see this country fixed. I want to help my fellow Australians escape the money printer, escape the central banks that I hate so much, and help Australia become a better place. I live in hope. I live in hope that Australians with the right education, with the work that you're doing, Joel, I love what you're doing in terms of waking the population up and pushing towards a more free society. You know, I love that. For me, I focus on the money. I focus on gold and silver and platinum. I focus on getting my clients into the right assets and helping them protect their wealth and grow their wealth and, you know, generate profits. That's my focus. But I'm so glad that there's somebody out there fighting to make this country a better place, because I'm too busy, right? Like, if you saw how busy my business was right now and how many people wanted to buy gold and silver off me, I mean, we've sold $20 million this month. It's insane.
Phenomenal.
Our previous record was $13.5 million. We're only halfway through the month, right? So I'm too busy. I love this country. I'm too busy to fix it. And I'm so glad that you're out there doing it, Joel, because I couldn't think of anyone better for it.
It's a team effort, really. No, look, and I call it the body of Christ. You know, a hand can't be an eye, an eye can't be a foot, and all of that. You know, so you know, I'm the eyebrows. So, Rami, Rami, you've been listening. Did you have any questions, mate, for the guys? I see you've been writing a few things.
Dude, I get excited whenever you have these geniuses here. Honestly, look,
Hopefully for all the right reasons, right?
generally I have like 3 questions. Okay, short answers are sufficient. So, what would like changing the like how would bringing down the energy prices in Australia affect the crypto mining industry? That's one of my questions. The other one is, how would the change of some of the Arab world policies towards Bitcoin impact the markets? Because, you know, like Bitcoin is considered in places like Saudi Arabia haram, but you know, it's a wealthy country and they're about to change that soon.
Really?
Yeah. And my third question is, how would AGI and the blockchain revolution impact the role of big useless government? That's my third question.
Bish.
Yeah, so a couple of things to unpack. In terms of bringing down energy prices in Australia, if we can somehow, by the grace of God, be able to do that, it would actually be a boon for Bitcoin mining and AI data centers and crypto mining, because it would make it more commercially feasible to do so. If there's low energy costs, it means that it's more commercially viable to run these large mining centers. Most of Australian Bitcoin mining has left offshore because it's more energy productive and efficient to go to places where there's lower energy prices. So if it comes down, I think we'll see a big onshoring of Bitcoin mining and AI data centers being here. In terms of haram, halal, I'm not a clerk or anything like that. I've had these conversations in my own family household, coming from a Muslim household myself. When I first started talking to my family about buying Bitcoin back in 2016, they looked at me like I had horns coming out of my head, and they go, it sounds like that's the devil's work. And I'm not here to debate it. I know what Bitcoin role is within a financial asset portfolio. It's a great diversifier. Having exposure to it is incredibly important. I'm not here to declare one way or the other. In terms of how the Arab world views it, you can just look to the UAE and other Gulf countries. companies. They are very pro Bitcoin and crypto. You can pay for Uber rides and luxury watches and cars and Bitcoin and digital assets over there. So it's just a trend that continues to persevere in that part of the world. But to be honest with you, it doesn't really affect the crypto markets all that much because it's such a small influence. The US is the financial center of the world, and they have quite a lot of pro-Bitcoin legislature that's coming through, pro-digital asset legislature that's coming through, and also they're the largest holder of gold, the US Treasury, if it's still there in Fort Knox. That's over to Tim. But yes, to kind of unpack all of those questions in the short manner, that's how it all works.
Very good.
Can I just add to that? I mean, you've got to look at the Middle East. You're right about the market capitalization of crypto. I mean, Sam can talk about oil. I mean, one of the major commodities of the world, if not the, I don't know, Sammy, is oil bigger than gold on the world stage?
Oil is bigger than gold, and I say this as a gold bug. Oil is the most important commodity in the world. I lived in the Middle East for 10 years growing up, 7 years in Abu Dhabi, 2.5 years in Oman before that, 10 months in Saudi Arabia. So I'm intimate with the importance of oil for the global economy and what it can do for a society that produces it in large quantities. Oil is the most important commodity on the planet. So, with the Middle East, they're moving towards crypto. What I learned living in the Middle East was that they love gold. They also love silver as well. They understand that it's real money. They don't have much trust in the US dollar for good reason. And now seeing them accepting Bitcoin, and it makes complete sense to me because something that Bisher and I, we're good friends. We've been friends for a long time, almost a decade now. And something we've agreed on from day one is that central banks are evil and sound money is important. And we just took two different paths. I took the physical path. He took the digital path. We both believe in sound money. And that's, I guess, the point I'm making here with the Middle East is that this is a society of people that have loved gold and silver for a very long time. You go to Dubai, you go to the gold souk, it's incredible what you can get over there. So seeing them accepting crypto and Bitcoin, it makes sense to me.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, we didn't get to cover this story because we've got to wrap it up, but Luxembourg Sovereign Wealth Fund invests 1% of its portfolio into Bitcoin. I think this just shows you a sign of the times. We're seeing more and more stories of this every day.
It's strategic reserve of the US Treasury, and it's also Deutsche Bank, the 26th largest bank in the world, looking at Bitcoin as reserve. We've got the Bank of Poland, I believe, also coming online. So you're going to see this go from basically a gamified token, is what a lot of people say, to a monetary asset. Why? Because the world is moving digital and it functions beautifully as a reserve asset. By the way, there is a great chapter in my new book.
Mate, I was just about to plug it.
Oh, sorry.
I was just being the Bitcoin crypto guy, I do want to encourage people, do not forget about gold and silver right now. I mean, it has had an incredible year, and I'm sure Sammy can step out how silver is so undervalued relative to where it is today. I mean, look, I don't mean to dissuade people from doing business with me. I want you to come and invest in Bitcoin, but please don't forget about gold and silver because honestly, it is for something that has been around for 5,000 years and has been money for so long, it is so misunderstood. And I'm really glad that we've got somebody like Sam who can educate, and Tim, of course, who can educate the public on how important it is. I mean, being in a Lebanese household, you know this, Joel, we love gold. We love gold. My uncles would hide gold under the bed because there was no cash, just gold.
Yeah, smart, very smart.
Sorry, where do your uncles live?
You'd have to walk through a brick wall to get to them. Yeah. But in all honesty, gold and silver, I love these assets as much as I do love Bitcoin. I just think that they work really well together as a complementary positions. There's a lot of the time when people say, should I do gold or should I do silver or should I do Bitcoin? I just put it together. It's not hard.
Yeah, what's nuts to me is the last time you guys were in studio, it was like, since then we've seen like a 40% increase in, I think it was gold or
silver's run. Right. So gold's up 60% this year. Silver's up 80% this year in US dollars for both. And just a quick 2-minute bit here on the precious metals as a market trader here. People ask me all the time, Sam, you're a bullion guy. I want to buy some bullion. What do you recommend? You buy gold, buy silver, buy platinum? What do you say? My 2 cents is right here, right now, silver. And I'll step out why. From a trading perspective, we've just seen silver have a quarterly close above the $43 level. That is the highest quarterly close in history. That is a quarterly breakout on the quarterly chart. Then, a few weeks later, we've seen a weekly close above the key $50 level. That was the high in 1980. That was the high in 2011. So silver has just broken all-time highs. From a trading perspective, it's broken out of a 45-year cup and handle pattern. Now, if you know much about trading, cup and handle patterns resolve explosively to the upside. So we saw a weekly close above 50 on Friday night, Saturday morning, our time here in Australia. And this week, the price of silver is already up $3 an ounce. So that's on almost 10% gain in the space of 3 days. Guys, silver is going to $100 an ounce within the next 6 to 12 months. If you think that it's too late now, then you need to get in because it is going to the moon.
What's supply like, Sammy, just quickly?
Well, here's the thing, Timmy. People ask me, Sam, I love what you're saying, but I've looked on your website and it says stock out for all your products. I'm currently waiting on $20 million of stock from my refineries at the moment. So what people are able to do is call in, place an order, lock in spot price before it keeps going up, pay for the order. We send that straight off to the refinery. And then when the refinery delivers the product, we ship it out to our clients. And this is unusual. The extreme demand we're seeing in the bullion industry has put the refineries at max capacity, and none of us have any spare product laying around. It walked out the door weeks ago.
Yep.
So if you look at the media, ABC Bullion lines out the door. Every bullion deal is the same across the country. We are absolutely flat out. And how do you have all that stock on hand? You can't. I can't have $20 million of stock on hand, right? I'm a wealthy guy, but I'm not that wealthy. So again, we can take orders, we can lock in spot price, but you're looking at a little bit of a wait for delivery, depending on the product, anywhere between a couple of weeks to a couple of months.
All right. Sam, more power to your arm, mate. That's awesome to hear.
I was just going to say, guys, you're not bullish enough. You do not have enough gold, silver, and Bitcoin for what's coming down the pipeline. I just will leave it on this note. I love your audience. They've been so lovely. I've been speaking to a lot of them one-on-one personally as they call in.
But you've been ringing them individually, all of them.
Well, when they call up, I'm available. But gold, silver, Bitcoin, guys, these are the assets that will protect your family for generations to come. Do not hope that the politicians are going to wake up one day and do you any good. It's not going to happen. Don't imagine that central banks are going to stop printing currency. That's not going to happen. So let's just protect yourselves with the best insurance that you can have, which is gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've gotten value out of this podcast. If you want to find these gentlemen's books, whether it's Tim Mangin's brand new book, 2033, The Great Reset, I'll have the link in the description. He also has 2 other books as well. So I'm going to have a link to all of the places where you can get all 3 books. He's got Things We Were Never Told About Money, and he's also got The Great Asset Shift. And I'm going to get Tim back very soon for a one-on-one interview about 2033, The Great Reset, so that he can chat a lot more unencumbered about the news of the day. I want a timeless interview with him so he can take that and promote his book, because it's a great book. It's got, I was having a gaze through the general contents. He gives you a bit of a history tour. He holds your hand and he takes you along and he gives you an insight into everything you need to know about money and where things are going. So Tim Manger, not only is his social media in the description, but also his books. I also want to thank Bisher for coming from Stormrake. I've got a link if you want to start trading with him today. Go and support Bisher. We've got a special link for you guys in the description. Thank you, Bisher, for coming. And guys, I've also got a link to Sam's Liberty Bullion so that you can get in and get those pre-orders done with regards to gold and silver. I'm very excited that he's starting an office in Sydney across the road from ABC Bullion. I think it's great marketing. And I think that, it's going to be hilarious. The memes, I write themselves. I'm very much excited to see that. But guys, if you want to support this show, one of the best things you can do is to support these guys around us. We have some agreements in place which help support what we're doing, but we truly do believe in crypto, in gold. If you didn't know, crypto helped me build this studio to the tune of over $100,000 from my trading, and I couldn't have done it without the freedom of crypto. I couldn't have done it without quick transfers to pay tradies, to get money out, to actually do that. Banks are holding up money. They don't like people transferring in and out. They delay trades for a week. When you've got tradies on site, that's not possible. That's not actually a thing we can do. The other thing is, if you also want to support the show, we've got MAGA hats as well. We've just had a whole bunch of orders, actually. I just dropped this one now. Turning Point Australia, we've just had our MAGA orders come out for the MAGA hats. We've got the Freedom T-shirts, the Freedom caps as well. And when
Can I get a MAGA tie?
a MAGA tie,
I'll trade you this
We'll
one for
laugh
the MAGA
about it,
tie.
but we're working on it. We're actually working on it. We're great minds think working on that. We're
Albanese ordered a maggot.
Sorry. What rhymes with maggot?
You ordered it. Yeah. No, but look, we've got plenty more merch orders coming out. If you're in Brisbane, keep an eye out for the hats. We're sending some complimentary Freedom hats up there, which will be handed out a bit in Charlie Kirk fashion, not by me, but some of the organisers up there. They're going to be thrown into the audience. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to donate, click the link in the description. I want to thank these gentlemen for coming out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao. Thanks, gents. That was awesome. Really enjoyed that.
That was incredible.
That was awesome, man.